even then they sent me to Czechoslovakia to use block funds, and the orchestra in Czechoslovakia didn't want to play with me.
Oh,
and
really? I didn't know that,
we had to
man.
go fly to London the next day. And
Wow.
I was so nervous, and I remember the session of the first classical record I did, I was so nervous I couldn't get my stuff together, man. I was messing up through the first session, and the conductor, it's a beautiful guy named Ray Lepard, he came to me in the break and he said, hey man, now we have 2 days to do this. We lost 1 day.
Right.
1/2 of that first day is gone. Now, whatever you got to do
Step up, man. You got to step
get
it up.
yourself together. He stopped the orchestra. He stopped recording. He said, whatever you got to do, you take that time.
Right.
And when you're ready to come in here and play this music, you let me know.
Right.
He said, if you're not ready, we're going to go home.
Right.
But we can't record like this.
Right.
So, man, I had to go back and just get my mind together. You know, like, okay, I practice this music hour after hour after hour. Let me get myself together and just focus and concentrate on what I'm doing. Then I went back and, okay.
You got it straight.
You know what I mean?
You sure? Yeah.
But
no.
I remember all those kind of experiences.
Yeah.
Of,
Well, I mean, you know, it humbles you, and again, if you're going to maintain the wave, you know, and you're up and down and trying to maintain, you got to do what's right.
You got to keep your mind focused, you know. Sometimes I would have arguments about the music, or they always want me to kind of play some type of popular music or not play jazz, but I would always just look, you know, this what's happening.
Yeah.
And, you know, it worked out in the long run. It just...
Well, look where you've ended up. I mean, in your wildest dreams, look behind us, this incredible hall. Did you ever think that that would lead to this gig as an artistic director, which in itself must be consuming as anything?
No, it was that kind of stuff didn't exist in that time.
Right.
You know, you wouldn't think of having a hall for jazz. I never even hardly heard jazz in a concert hall. I mean, when I was 17.
Sure.
I never would think of an organization. I never thought of nonprofit organizations or an organization dedicated to the music and its value to our culture, or of a board of directors getting around an issue like jazz and spending their time and energy to raise money, or all the beautiful people we have on staff that work these nonprofit jobs that are invigorated by this program. People have kids that come up in it, and
Yeah.
so far as being an artistic director, some people called me from Lincoln Center to book 3 concerts or something. I said, yeah, call Crouch, 3 concerts. Then I was doing 200 concerts a year. So what I thought about 3 concerts was just 3 concerts in August somewhere. I didn't,
Right, sure.
It didn't mean that much. And then it started to grow. And, you know, we'd always been on the road doing education programs and things like that, always going to schools. And then all of a sudden, through Jazz Lincoln Center, we started to do more and more of these things and get more people involved.
Right.
And the whole movement we have had at Jazz Lincoln Center has always been about kind of the expansion of feeling, getting more people involved around it. And now it's resulting in us having these magnificent halls and 22 education programs and all the different things that we do.
Do you think Europeans in general are more tuned into this genre, to jazz, than Americans are?
I don't think that.
For a long period of time, people used to have, there's more appreciation for jazz there.
I don't think that. I think the European attention span is a little longer.
Right.
Because they have a tradition of kind of art music and of the arts that require a little more attention.
Right.
I think that that there was one point where the racial kind of situation in America was so negative that the musicians would much rather live in Europe.
Right.
There's a famous interview with Lester Young where he says, hey, his stuff goes on here too.
Right.
And I think that over the time, as more art musics begin to imitate European music, there's less need for them to really care about American music one way or the other.
Right.
When they're listening to forms of jazz that sound more like their music, why do they need us?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't find them to be better listeners necessarily than Americans of jazz.
Right. Push comes to shove, what record do you never get tired of listening to? Do you have one that you just like, you put it on, the smiles on your face?
Man, you know, it's so many of them.
Yeah.
It's like I love listening to music so much. I'd have to just, you have to.
Is there one record you wore the grooves out on when you were coming up?
Man, there was so many. Clifford Brown with strings, trumpet albums, you know.
Sure.
When I was coming up, Freddie Hubbard, Red Clay.
Red Clay by Freddie, okay.
Someday My Prince Will Come,
Miles, great record.
Coltrane, Giant Steps. Well,
yeah.
I listen to that all the time.
Right.
I guess those records like that.
Right.
Then as I became older, where there was a lot more music, I started to learn a lot more about the music. Duke Ellington, Far East Suite.
Yeah.
Billie Holiday, Lady in Satin.
Yep.
Art Tatum, solo piano masterpieces. So many of them.
Sure. Yeah.
If you just put me in a direction, I could just.
All right. So, well, let's say Stanley's trying to turn you on to more of the improvisational avant-garde. Was there anything that he turned you on to in that world? Something by Cecil Taylor, something by...
No, not so much. That music sounded a lot like European music to me. You know, I had already played a lot of European music, Stockhausen's music, Burial's music. I had played a lot of European music. I played
Charles Gale,
Ralph Shapey. You know, I played a lot of, because I had played a lot of classical music at that time. So the jazz, to listen to that, it was interesting, but it just sounded a lot like like classical music, which I wasn't against it so much, but I just didn't see why. So they ended up doing that. I always wondered, me and him, I would be like, so all these years of people swinging, and their conclusion was to be like European music.
Right.
Which is not that I dislike the European music. I actually like a lot of European avant-garde, interesting things that they discovered. And even though I'm naming some American composers in that, interesting things and concepts and ways of looking at music of great value, that the jazz musicians will come to that same conclusion. Always seemed very interesting.
Right.
Like to me, I liked Ornette Coleman's music, so we would talk about Ornette and the grooves and the early music of Ornette and this record or that record, and him and Edward Blackwell, because Blackwell's from New Orleans, and you know, my father and Alvin Baptiste drove out to California to see Ornette Coleman in the 50s.
Really?
They just went to where he lived and said, "Man, we just came out to see what you were doing," and Ornette told me that story.
Wow.
And of course, I grew up hearing about him, and I love him.
Yeah.
It's more of a familial thing.
Right.
With Ornette and his music. He lived with Herlin Riley's grandfather. And Herlin's uncle, Melvin Lasty, we call him Papi, he could play like gospel trumpet.
Right.
He was like Ornette's brother in New Orleans. Ornette had lived in New Orleans for a little time, even though he was from Fort Worth. So it's more like, you know, with the avant-garde. Ornette, I didn't know he was...
You didn't know what
they
style
called avant-garde.
Yeah,
he was just Ornette. You know?
Well, you know, your father's championed a lot of young, as well as you have. You know, I've been down to Jazz Fest. I've been to the small clubs. I've seen your father play and bring up the up-and-comers.
Yeah, he loves young musicians. Yeah.
You know, I mean, you yourself, with the cats that you've pulled in from the orchestras and the different people that you've worked with through the programs, you're always giving those opportunities. What is it? When can you tell if somebody's ready to take that next step? You know, I never can tell. It's up to them. Really? And I like the young and the older musicians. I like to play with all of them. I don't really celebrate the young ones more than the older ones. Like I love Joe Temperley's playing. Just the big sound, the warmth, the guy from Scotland in his late 70s. You know, play like that. Man, that's a wonderment kind of. With the younger musicians, their seriousness, you know, you just can tell they're ready, they're serious, they're dedicated, their plan changes. It's a certain feeling they get, like, look, I'm out here to do this. What would you like people to walk away with this incredible facility that you're artistic director with? I always want people to walk away feeling uplifted and feeling like they're not alone. You know, that their individuality is respected, but there's a lot of us out here. And I want them to feel like a kind of hospitality. We're working on it, just a down-home feeling. Hey, you know, welcome. It's not overdone. This is a hall, but it's our hall. And we can act however we want to act in it. We just come sit down here, have a good time, go home. You know, not, got to feel it. You know, feel it. Just come in and be a part of it, participate. And I think it's great that you have your own space, because maybe they were intimidated by the classical connection with jazz, and now jazz has its own home. And it's in New York, man. It's, you know, it should be here, right? You got to come and make it be yours, you know, participate. Make it be your own. Make it be. That's the thing I always like to say. Make it be. Whatever it's going to be, make it be. Make it be right. Make it be sweet. Make it be hot. Make it swing. Wynton, thanks. Hey, man. Continue. Great pleasure. Thanks for being on the Culture Catch, Wynton. We'll look for you soon on the Jazz at Lincoln Center. Thanks, man.